Assalamualaikum and welcome to Harborne Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 123. So alhamdulillah, we're continuing. This is our fourth session on the Battle of Khandaq, Ahzab, the Battle of the Ditch, the Battle of the Confederates, the Allies, the coalition, so however you want to translate it. Certainly the surah in the Qur'an that refers to this is called Ahzab. So inshallah we'll carry on. We'll do a few sort of recaps throughout today's session, inshallah. But last week we talked about the fact that it's an existential threat, the mercenary army. We talked about the digging the trench, the skirmishes between the Muslims and the non-Muslims, and how Ali ibn Abi Talib and Zubair ibn Al Awwam, they had a duel, as it were, and killed a couple of the Quraysh, and the attempt to buy off Ghatafan by the Prophet ﷺ, and also the injury of Saad ibn Muadh. And again, we might touch upon a couple of those points during this session. But again, just to say that the Battle of Ahzab, Khandaq, it's roughly about a month long, between 20 and 30 days. So it's a proper siege. So it's not the same as a proper sort of battlefield intensity of war. Very treacherous this war. And again, it's not something that the coalition, the Allies, the Confederates, they were expecting. They were expecting, with their 10,000 strong, they would just sweep in and demolish Muslims faced with the trench. They got no choice but to undergo a siege. So as part of the siege, the machinations carry on, and this is war after all. And one of the main instances, and again we'll come back onto this when we do the completion of the battle, and that's the story of Banu Quraiza. And we talked about the other Jewish tribes in Yathrib and Medina at the time, Banu Qainuqa and Banu Nadheer. So these they've both been expelled, but Banu Nadheer, their leader Huyay ibn Aktab, he'd gone to Khaybar and raised some funds and alliances to come back and take back Medina, and this was their Confederate coalition. We know Huyay ibn Aktab, his hatred towards Islam. His daughter Safiya, she became the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. And again, that's the story much later on. And we've talked numerous times about the occasion when the Prophet ﷺ came into Medina and was camped in Ubada, and the delegation of the Jewish rabbis went, and then Huyay came back really despondent, talking to Safiya's other uncle, and they recognized that the Prophet ﷺ is the prophet that's been prophesied in their books. And the other chap asked Huyay, what are you going to do about it? And Huyay said, well, I'm going to be his enemy till the end of my days. And here you go, true to his word, he is an enemy of the Prophet. And again, you don't know where salvation or pedigree is. Ibrahim alayhi salam's father was an idol fashioner. He made idols. Here we have the daughter of someone who's an expressed enemy of the Prophet is coming here to kill the Prophet and annihilate the Prophet. His own daughter, embraces Islam and becomes a wife of the Prophet. And it's a long trench. We've talked a bit about that before. At least 2 kilometres. Some of the books say up to 12 kilometres. And I mean, 2 kilometres is, as I've said before, the top of Gilhurst Road, all the way down Gilhurst Road, Court Oak Road, towards George and Helen. So that's a long stretch. So it's, you know, obviously it's you know, it's got its weak points, and we know this because some of the people came across, you know, Ibn Abijal, Khalid bin Walid, and the people for the duel. So they came across, and Huyay, he knows Medina really well, so he comes back and forth to and from Banu Quraiza. And again, it's just as an individual, it's much easier to surreptitiously, covertly, you know, get across the ditch. You just will wait your turn, wait till the patrol goes, and then you quickly go across, and especially at night time. And this is what Huyay did. So he goes and visits the chief of Banu Quraiza, Kaab ibn Asad Al-Qurazi. Now, again, this is probably something that they've pre-planned, as in the planning from the Confederate alliance, the coalition, is that they will try really hard once they've camped outside to get Banu Quraiza to act as the fifth column inside of Medina and turn, and this is probably critical to their strategy. And obviously it makes sense if they're going to try and get trying to do everything that they can to defeat the Muslims. This is obviously one thing that they would want to do. So Huyay goes, visits Kaab ibn Asad and Kaab there in Banu Quraiza. They're living in the fortresses, and there he sees them coming. Kaab sees them coming and shuts the door in front of Huyay. And Huyay is furious and goes, let me in, and he's banging on the door of the fortress, and Kaab says, no, you're a bad omen, you're here to bring bad luck. I don't want to get tempted from you, and your intentions can only be bad. And he knows that. He knows his his fellow tribesmen. But Huyay is quite persistent, knocking on the door, let me in. And then Kaab ibn Asad says, look, I have a treaty with the Prophet, or he says Muhammad, I have a treaty with Muhammad, and I'm not going to break my promise, for I've only seen truthfulness in him and fulfillment. He does what he says. There's no chance of me going back on this treaty. And again, this treaty was reaffirmed for the 3rd time just very recently. But Huyay, this is, as I say, his strategy. He has to get in. He has to get them to change their minds. So he's knocking on the door and shouting and screaming, still not being let in. And so he decides another tactic. He knows the weak point of Kaab. So he says, look, the only reason you're not opening the door is you don't want to share your food with me, right? You're selfish. You're stingy. You don't want to share your food. I've come all this way. What type of host are you? So with that insult, Kaab sort of he doesn't want that slur on his character that he didn't let him in because he didn't want to feed him, obviously because the whole tribe can hear. And basically Huyay saying, look, give me some food at least. I'm alone outside here. And then, so Kaab sort of eventually gives in, opens the doors, and as soon as the doors opened, Huyay sort of pounces on Kaab, and he's sort of battering him, with arguments for him to tear up his agreement and treaty. And amongst the things he says, look, I've brought oceans of men, and it's true. 10,000 people. I mean, this is unprecedented. I've brought oceans of men. I've got the chiefs of the Quraysh, I've got the chiefs of the Ghatafan, and they've promised me that they're not going to leave until they've wiped out Muhammad and his companions. I mean, this is cast iron. They've all essentially signed in blood that they're 10,000 of them. Right? So there's no way you can lose. Just think of the benefits. And he's still saying, look, no, he's been really good to me. I can't do this. I can't turn back. And then Huyay starts promising everything. Look, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. You'll have X, Y, and Z. Probably says, look, we'll make you king or this or that. But just really, lavishing it on Kaab. But Kaab, he's the leader of his people. He needs to think more strategically, and he's scared of losing. And he's scared of being treacherous and then going down in history as that. And he wants, cast iron guarantees. And so the thing that really did it for Kaab was when Huyay said, look, basically, I'm going to pledge my own safety with your safety. Right? If anything happens to you, I will share the same fate. Okay? So if you get captured, I'm going to be captured with you. Okay? So he, basically says, look, take me as collateral, right? I'm to show how much I am, sure we're going to win. I am on your side. I'm going to stand by with you. So Kaab's wavering a bit. We're saying, look, you're not good news. You're like a cloud that looks as if it's going to bring rain, and looks as if it's full of water and bounties, but all it gives is thunder and lightning. So you're all talk, there's no action, and there's no benefit from you. But Huyay keeps pestering all night long, and then finally Kaab gives up and says, fine, fair enough, you've convinced me with all these guarantees, all these assurances. He then physically tears up the treaty. So, I mean, they're confident they're going to win, 10,000 of them. So, Huyay's, managed to manipulate, Kaab, who didn't want to do this against his own better judgment. Having said, look, the chiefs of the Quraysh, they're stationed in Al Ghatafan, and their chiefs are in Uhud, and we're here to do the job and finish it off. So then they've torn up the treaty, and then they start to launch their counter-offensive, their war operations against the Muslims, because they're in their fort. So they're able to start to undermine the morale of the Muslims. And this is probably, we talked about this story before, but this is probably where that story came of Safiya, the daughter of Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet's aunt. And all the women are there in their secluded fort, and along with Hassan bin Thabit, and then Safiya wakes up Hassan and says, look, I can hear some noises outside, go check it out. And then he goes, look, just leave me alone, it's none of my business, I can't do that, and why are you trying to embarrass me? And then she takes a dagger, or takes a club in other narrations, and then she basically kills the Jewish person who's trying to climb into the fort. And then when he's dead, Safiya goes to Hassan and says, look, grab his armor, grab his loot. But then Hassan says, look, I have no need of that. So you can see that that there's a change in tactics now. Banu Quraiza, they're sending out scouts. They're trying to undermine the Muslims. They're trying to find an easy passage into the fortress where the women and children are. So again, the news of this obviously gets to the Prophet ﷺ. So these are reports at the moment. These are isolated incidents, and he needs to verify it. He needs to check it out. So then and obviously there are other murmurings. They can probably see that Banu Quraiza are changing in their way of their attitude, because it's a long siege. So then the Prophet he asked Zubair ibn Al Awwam to go check it out. So Zubair, he goes in stealth, and he's sort of spying on Banu Quraiza. Maybe he sees the toings and froings. Maybe he sees Huyay going in and out, or the fact that they're preparing for war. So then he goes back to the Prophet ﷺ and reports this. And this is, and I think this is the occasion where the Prophet ﷺ says, look, every prophet has a helper, as a disciple, and you're my disciple, you're my helper. So the Prophet ﷺ, finds out from his scout Zubair that actually there may be some truth in these rumors, so then he needs to verify it. He had this fear that Banu Quraiza had done this, and he sent his volunteer. Volunteer comes back and says, look, they've destroyed the treaty. So then, but this is hearsay, or this is assumption, but he needs to know for sure. So he selects 4 of the leaders of the Ansar, 4 of the chiefs who have good relations with Banu Quraiza, and he dispatches them to definitively find out what's happened, because obviously he's heard about the incident Al-Fari, where the people tried to storm the fortress where the women and children were. So he sends Saad ibn Muadh, who's the leader of the Aus, the most senior person in Yathrib, from the Ansar. Saad ibn Ubada, the leader of the Khazraj. So the 2 leaders, the 2 Saads, and we talked about Saad being the one who was shot by the arrow, etc. And when he dies, the throne of Allah shakes. Saad ibn Ubada, he's a very notable Sahabi. There's lots of stories about him, and his was the tent where, when the Prophet ﷺ died, the Muslims converged to try to decide who would take over after the Prophet ﷺ's death, before they buried him. And then also Abdullah ibn Rawaha and Muadh ibn Jubair. So these guys have gone, and the Prophet ﷺ says, look, it's a really tense situation. If it's true that they've reneged on their promise, on their treaty, tell me discreetly, right? Don't say it openly or explicitly, because I don't want to spread fear amongst the people, and this is going to weaken them, right? But if the treaty is still on, then shout it out loud, right? So again, there's psychological warfare. He knows the demoralizing effect that this will have on the Muslims if they find out Banu Quraiza have flipped. And again, you can see the ploy used by the enemies of the Muslims, exactly the same ploy that they used in the Battle of Uhud. The Muslims are marching out, and then Abdullah ibn Ubay al-Salul, he uses that moment to turn his army and march back, because he wants maximum propaganda, he wants maximum demoralization of the Muslims. But the Prophet says, look, don't make a big fuss about it if it's true. So these 4, they went to Banu Quraiza, and it's recorded that Banu Quraiza were really arrogant and very stuck up when the delegation came. Some of the narrations are that they were the most vulgar and arrogant towards these people like they've never seen before. Right? I mean, they were saying, this is Kaab saying, who is this Muhammad? We don't know Muhammad. We've got no treaty, and he'd ripped the treaty up already. So this really wound up Saad ibn Muadh, who's the leader, he's very close to them, and he just lost it, and he starts cursing them, shouting expletives, because this is a really, really tense situation. He knows how much this is, how much of a treachery this is, and how this will affect the Muslims, and he just can't contain his fury and his anger. But then Saad ibn Ubada, who's got a slightly different temperament, sort of, you can see Saad ibn Muadh really mouthing it off, calms him down and says, look, the matter between us and them, it's gone beyond cursing. Okay, there's, it's obvious what they've done, and anything you say is not going to turn them back. So then they come back dejected to the Prophet ﷺ, because they know the gravity of this. I mean, this they're already in a very precarious situation, an existential threat with 10,000 people camped outside, and now you've got up to 2,000 people, probably a fighting force of about 800-900 inside the city, potentially. Going to launch an attack and pin some movement against the Muslims, and this is just completely demoralizing. So they come back to the Prophet and they just basically do a shara. They say to the Prophet Rij and Bir Ma'una, and these were the two treacherous tribes who pretended to become Muslim, and then when the Prophet had sent some delegation of people to teach them Islam, some Qur'an, they were just basically massacred. We talked about the massacre of Bir Ma'una and Raji, which happened close to each other. And the Prophet then he used to do dua qunut. So when the Prophet he heard this, he knew exactly what that meant. So then he exclaimed, Allahu Akbar, right? And possibly this is a way of countering the negative propaganda, so it's lifting the morale of the Muslims. But he also, he knows he's got assurance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he knows that this is now the opportunity to get rid of the only pocket of potential resistance. I mean, there is the munafiqeen, but they are outwardly Muslim. Here you've got people, the Jewish tribes, who've maintained their Jewishness. There are no polytheists left. So he knows that basically this spells the end for them. But the other Sahabi, they read between the lines, that the rumors get to them, and this is a very tense situation. So eventually they find out, and then they are gripped with fear. 10,000 on the outside, you've got nearly 1,000 on the inside. The Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes reference to this in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ahzab, where he goes, in translation, and remember when they came at you from above you and from below you, and when the eyes grew wild and the hearts reached the throats, and some of you were starting to have doubts about Allah. There the believers were tried and shaken with a mighty shaking, right? Some earthquake, and again, this is beautiful description. In the midst of this, suddenly, you don't know where to turn. They're above you, or they're below you, they're surrounding you. You don't know what to do. Your eyes are growing. You're looking here and there. You don't know where your security is. And that sense which may Allah protect us from, where sometimes when things are really severe, really tense, you can feel your heart almost jumping out. And again, this is one of those scenes that Allah describes that will happen on the Day of Judgment, where people's hearts will be in their throats, where it's you're just so tense. So describing this tension when the Muslims finally, heard of these rumors. But the Prophet ﷺ, he's trying his best. He's saying Allahu Akbar. He's saying, look, this is glad tidings. Glad tidings, good news. Abshiru. This is, put your trust in Allah. This is only positive for the Muslims, and only someone with such a firm yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His promise will be in this situation that will turn this sort of really desperate situation and think positively. And again, this shows the psychology of the Prophet ﷺ. They're always looking for the good and looking for the benefit and looking for the positives in everything. And so and the Prophet ﷺ, he knows the promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will be eating from the plates of Kisra and of Caesar, right? But as Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ said, look, we are people too hasty and we don't trust in what will happen. But as I said, even some of the Sahabis, they're freaking out. How are we going to win? How can Allah help us now? We'll never be able to get through this, right? This is the middle of winter. Their food rations are running out. 10,000 out. They're not going anywhere. You've got the Banu Quraiza who can launch a counteroffensive at any time. And another learning that the scholars have said from this in terms of the news is that the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't allow the Muslims to not just to be weakened by this negative propaganda, but it's also keeping it on the down low. It's not about sensationalizing bad things, and it's about treating them appropriately. So this is not to promote gossip, this is not to sensationalize things, this is not to wind people up. It's a very different culture and perspective, where generally in society you look at the positive things, you don't rake up all the negatives, you don't rake up all the juicy tidbits, right? You need to move beyond that. As Muslims, we need to move beyond that, and not to serialize and sensationalize every little a negative thing that's happened. So and so said this happened, did you hear about that? So it's that type of philosophy that just mind your own business and just look at the positive things. So there you've got that bombshell, and then a second bombshell, or the third bombshell, because you've got people camped outside. The next bombshell is that the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, they then essentially withdraw again, like they did in Uhud, and they're using these rumors, to as an excuse to pull back. So so the Muslims are becoming even more pressed in a vice, right? And they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked for permission to go back to their homes and protect their family. And they said, look, the situation is really desperate. We need to go home and protect our women and children. And again, they have no intention of fighting. They were cowards, and Allah calls them out in the Qur'an. And then they start adding to the rumors, and then they're basically saying, here, and again, it's well known, the Prophet when he's digging the trench, he smashed the boulder and he says, look, the gates of Syria, the gates of Persia, the gates of Yemen, they're all going to be given to you. And so now the munafiqeen, they're once they've got the treachery of Banu Quraiza, they turn around and say, look, here's Muhammad, right? He's promising us the treasures of Kisra and Qaisar, and now we are too scared to even go to the toilet, I mean, these are the insulting things that they're saying. So basically, look, do you believe this chap? He's promising you the treasures of Persia, and Persia, as we said before, in modern day equivalents, it's like how powerful the Americans are. Saying, look, he's promising you the White House and to take over America. Yeah, we're too scared to even go outside and go to the toilet. So again, these situations exposed the munafiqeen, what's really inside their heart. They have no loyalty to Islam, they have no loyalty to the Prophet ﷺ. And these are one of the characteristics, the traits of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, is they look for excuses, right? And they'll follow their whims. They don't use Islam as a basis to judge, right? And they're taken in with the glitz and the glamour and the bling, and that's where they're going to go. They're not there to fight for truth and justice and Islam. So then they disperse. And so the army, it's already thinly divided. They're already, 2,000-3,000 of them max, patrolling and guarding the trench. Now the Prophet ﷺ has to split the army even more and send a battalion back to defend the women from a counteroffensive from the Banu Quraiza. So it makes it even more desperate. And he has to send a group to monitor the whatever Banu Quraiza is doing. They need to make sure that there's they've got early warning from them. So it's a really, really desperate situation, and Allah again refers to this in Surah Al-Ahzab, and he goes, and when the hypocrites and those in whose hearts is a disease of doubt said, Allah and His Messenger promised us nothing but delusions, right? And when a part of them said, O people of Yathrib, and again they don't call it Medina, right? And this was a sign of the munafiqeen, even though the Prophet ﷺ forbade them from calling it Yathrib, so you have to talk about Medina now. They said, O people of Yathrib, there is, and this is Allah quoting them in the Qur'an, O people of Yathrib, there is no stand possible for you against the enemy attack, therefore go back. And a band of them asked for permission of the Prophet ﷺ, saying, truly our homes lie open to the enemy, and they lay not open, but they wish to flee, right? And basically saying, look, these guys are cowards, they have no intention of fighting, and they're just using this excuse, Banu Quraiza and everything, to really, weaken your morale even more, okay? And again, Allah's talking about how much counter propaganda they're doing, the munafiqeen. There's no way you're going to win. He's promising you delusions. This is this is that. So again, and we'll talk about it again next time. But for some of the weak-hearted Muslims, they're feeling really tense and again very shifty in terms of what's going to happen next. But for the really strong Muslims, they say, look, this is no problem. Allah's on our side. This is what Allah promised us. This we know this is going to happen. We put our full trust in Allah. And so some of the narrations then go, in all this tension and uncertainty, the Prophet ﷺ, he wrapped himself in his robe and began to make dua, to meditate. What's the outcome from Banu Quraiza? And then suddenly he felt, his burden had been relieved, and he goes, Allah is great, hearken you Muslims, Allah has given you glad tidings of victory and support. And then some say this is the point in time where the Prophet then made we talked about this last time, and then made the offer to the chiefs of Ghatafan, in order to break the coalition, he would offer them a third of the fruit, the date harvest of Medina, and Saad bin Muadh and Saad ibn Ubada. Again, they were both consulted, only them were consulted, and then they said, look, O Messenger of Allah, if this is Allah's will, then we're going to obey it. But if it's something that you think you want to do, just to provide security for us, then we don't need it. We're experienced, we can fight. We know these polytheists and these idolaters, and we can safely say we don't need the fruit. They don't need our fruits of our orchards, our dates. We would rather. They rather need to exterminate us completely. Now that Allah's honored us with Islam, the best thing to do is just put them to the sword. We don't accept the fact that we're going to give away our produce. The Prophet was content with that, and they didn't sign the dotted line. A couple of final things. Amidst all this tension, amidst all this uncertainty, you can see now that this is the game plan. This has probably been hatched and orchestrated, obviously from the other side of the trench, from the coalition. They've got Banu Quraiza to flip, and again, no doubt, and again, it's not recorded. No doubt, they sent delegation to Abdullah ibn Ubay and the hypocrites to get them to flip as well, right? And so 10,000 on the outside, Banu Quraiza have flipped, the Munafiqeen have flipped, and so then to increase the pressure on the Muslims, the siege intensifies, and they start showering arrows on the Muslims. They start really putting them under pressure with a potential fight, and this is a prelude to a final assault. So the Muslims, and just a few of the Muslims again guarding the trench, they're under constant barrage and fire and tension, and trying to patrol the trench as much as they can, because the assault could come at any time from either side, from the front and the back. So they're really caught up in that, and then it's narrated that it said and then Jabir ibn Abdullah, he says that on the day of the trench, Umar ibn al-Khattab came cursing the disbelieving Quraysh and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I haven't offered my Asr prayer and the sun is set," right? And the Prophet gosh, and he goes, "By Allah, I too have not offered the prayer yet," right? So you can see how tense everyone is. They didn't even have time or the wherewithal to pray Salat al-Khawf, right? They're just under so much pressure, so much tension, that that they literally forgot to pray Asr genuinely. And so it said that the Prophet ﷺ went to Buthan, he did wudu, and then he observed Asr prayer after the sun had set, and then he prayed Maghrib, right? So he made up for the missed prayer before he prayed his Maghrib. And again, the scholars have taken the fiqh from that, and that's encouraged for us to do. We should, if we have time, make up the missed prayer before you do the obligatory one, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us. He knows that if we do the obligatory prayer, then we might procrastinate and forget the one that we missed. And the Prophet when he's done that, he's literally cursing the Quraysh, right? Not that they're going to try and destroy him, and but the fact that the Prophet said, look, they've made us busy so much so that we have not even managed to pray Salatul Wusta, the middle Salat Asr, may Allah fill their houses and their graves with fire. Right? So he's not angry that they're attacking him and trying to destroy him. He's angry that they've made him miss his asr. Right? And again, it just goes to show that how important prayer is, and how some of us treat it so lightly when we miss a prayer. We missed a prayer, but the Prophet ﷺ, from what we know, this is one of the two occasions where the Prophet ﷺ missed his prayer. There's this occasion during the Battle of Khandaq, and then the other one, which we'll do inshallah later on. I think it's to do with when they're returning from the ifq of Aisha and the Prophet ﷺ. He wants to stop all the gossiping and all the backbiting, and then he basically marches the army day and night, and they march throughout the night, and then they get to a place where they camp, and this is an hour or so before Fajr, and then he said, we're going to camp here, and then he appoints, or Bilal volunteers to stay and watch and wake them up for Fajr. And so the Prophet then everyone just falls asleep, and they're all shattered because they've been marching day and night. And then the Prophet he wakes up with the sun on his face, and then he's just he sort of freaks out and says, look, Bilal, what happened? You're supposed to wake us up. What did you do? And Bilal said, look, chill. Well, he didn't say chill, but he said, the same thing happened to me that happened to you, right? The same person who took your soul during the sleep took my soul during sleep. You can't blame me. Genuinely, fell asleep. So these two occasions where the Prophet ﷺ, missed his that we know of, missed his prayer, and then made it up. So that's the other thing that happened in this really intense time, and it's possible that this is the time also when Saad ibn Muadh was shot by the arrow, because, as I say, they're really stepping up their game. The coalition Al-Ahzab, the allied forces, and they're just firing off arrows all the time, because that's all they can do. They can't breach the trench so easily. So this is, again, probably a prelude to a final assault, or this is how it's perceived. And again, Saad Mu'adh, he got shot by the arrow. It pierced him. So some say by the clavicle, and came out, and he's and it's a near fatal. Well, it is a fatal injury, but he doesn't know it's a fatal injury. But then he's making dua that basically says, "Oh Allah, you know that nothing is closer to my heart than striving in your way against these people, the kuffar, who belied your messenger and banished him from his town." So Quraysh, oh Allah, I deeply believe that you have decreed that we should fight them. So if there is still more fighting with them, the Quraysh, then let me stay alive in order to fight against them. But if it has settled down, I beseech you to ignite it again, so that I may breathe my last in this context. However, if you decree that this is the end for me, or that there's not going to be any other fighting between the Muslims and the Quraysh, then at least let me take or have full knowledge of the revenge against Banu Quraiza. Right? So again, he's got in his mind, look, this looks bad. If I die here, don't let me die without knowing what happens to Banu Quraiza, right? But if you allow me to get better, let me, and it's decreed that we're going to fight the Quraysh again, I'd like to fight them again, because these are the guys that drove the Prophet out of his home. And so finally, we talked about this before, the sort of the casualties, 10,000 on one side and just a few thousand on the other side, and Banu Qurayza and the Munafiqeen, right? But in all of this, it's said that only a handful of people actually died, and that's including the Mubaraza, the jewels, right? So maybe up to 6 Muslims, and some say maybe 10 of the allied forces, the coalition, they died. Some say less than that, you know. So, but you know, just a few number of casualties. So we'll finish it off there, and then next week we'll talk about how the tide turns in all this tense situation. You've got from a really unexpected angle, you've got victory coming, right? So there's someone from the Ghatafan tribe who comes and is able to basically almost single-handedly, you know, cast doubts and demoralize the Quraysh and Banu Quraiza and Ghatafan, and then in addition to that, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he, you know, sends his own soldiers in terms of the weather to sort out what's going on. So inshallah, I'll finish there. So inshallah, you know, probably do the end of the Battle of the Trench next week, and then possibly do Banu Quraiza as well, or start Banu Quraiza after that. But anyway, do remember us in your du'as, do remember the Ummah in your du'as. If you've got any comments or questions or clarifications, do email, WhatsApp, or comment on this, subscribe to the YouTube video, and share if you can, all that sort of stuff. So thank you for listening. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you know, taking the time out to listen to this. So you know, may Allah reward you for that. So I'll finish there. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.